Hello and welcome to the History Quiz with me, Joshua Daniels. This is the History Quiz of July 2024, one of a series of monthly quizzes I'm releasing on the penultimate Sunday of every month throughout the year of 2024. I try to include as many different geographical areas and different periods of time to try and make it as accessible and challenging as possible for you all. As you can probably tell, each of these quizzes has a specialist focused on the subject of history. So the rules for those of you who have never played before, really simple, really straightforward. Number 1, no conferring. You can play as your teams or on your own, and that doesn't just mean you can play individuals against each other. If you wanted to, you can also play on your own and just to test your own history knowledge. However, if you're playing against people, there is no discussion or cheating between players. Number 2, no using search engines or internet to find out the answers. That includes not pausing it or doing to try and Google a question or searching something sneakily on your phone while the quiz is in play. It all has to come off your own steam or from up here. Number 3, 1 answer per question, 1 point per correct answer. I will never ask you to list multiple answers for one question, and each question individually will only be worth 1 point. So no half points, no double points, no leeways, etc., no half measures. And finally, number 4, there are 5 categories, 30 questions, with 15 seconds to answer each one. There may be some exceptions. You do not need to answer all the questions, but will not get a point for questions left unanswered. So you don't need to answer every question. You will not be penalised for leaving questions unanswered. So there will be no minus points or losing of points or invalidating of an entire category. However, you only get a point for every correct answer. So any unanswered or incorrect questions will get you 0 points. So without further ado, if we're all ready to move on to the first category, and the first category is famous faces. It will be 10 questions, and each question will show you one image, and that image will be of a famous historical figure. All you have to do is write down the name of that famous historical figure. So without further ado, let's move on to the first question of the July quiz. Number 1, who is this? Number 2, who is this? Number 3, who is this? Number 5, number 4 even, who is this? Number 5, who is this? Number 6, who is this? Number 7, who is this? Number 8, who is this? Penultimate face, number 9, who is this? And final phase, number 10, who is this? And that brings an end to the first category, famous faces. Second category now is events and dates. This category is a little bit different. What I will show you is on the left hand side of the screen there will be 5 events labelled 1 to 5, and on the right hand side of the screen there will be 5 dates labelled A to E. You will have a minute to link as many of the events to their correct dates as possible. Now you could do this by writing down the events and the dates and marking them up via lines. You could write down the events and then write down the dates next to them, or you could simply put the numbers and the dates in their corresponding order, whichever is easiest for you. Your minute will start as soon as I finish reading out the final date. So the events are: number 1, Byzantium became known as Constantinople. Number 2, Edward the Confessor becomes King of England. Number 3, the deadliest tsunami in history. Number 4, William Shakespeare dies. Number 5, Year of the 4 Popes. And the dates on the right hand side: A, 1042, B, 1276, C, 1616, D, 330, E, 2004. About halfway through. About 10 seconds left. And that marks the end of category number 2. Moving on now to the third category, true or false. So I will show you a historical statement, 5 of them, and you will get a point if you mark it correctly whether it is true or false. So, without further ado, let's move on to the first question. Number 1, true or false? There have been 6 crewed landings on the moon. Number 2, true or false? Liechtenstein sent 80 men to war in 1866. They returned with 81. Number 3, true or false? Benjamin Franklin died of electrocution. Number 4, true or false? Bonnie and Clyde met when they both tried to rob the same liquor store. Number 5, true or false? The word blackmail comes from a charred letter delivered to George IV, threatening to reveal his secret and illegal marriage to Maria Fitzherbert. And that marks the end of that category. Moving on to our fourth and penultimate category, we are moving on to which came first. So I will show you 5 historical events. No, sorry, I'll show you 5 questions, each showing 2 historical events. All you have to do to win the point is say the correct one of which came first. So without further ado, let's move on to our first question. Number 1, which came first, the invention of the pen or the pencil? Number 2, which came first, Ronnie Cray's death or Reggie Cray's death? Number 3, which came first, the oldest classic horse race or the oldest golf course? Number 4, which came first, Battle of Waterloo or the Watergate scandal? And number 5, which came first, the annexation of Austria by Germany or the annexation of Korea by Japan? And that brings an end to the which came first category. Now moving on to our 5th and final category, general history knowledge. So there'll be 5 history questions, all of them just general history. All you have to do is write down the correct answer to get the point. So without further ado, let's move on to the first question of our final category. Number 1, the 335-year war, one of the longest yet with no deaths, was between the Isles of Scilly and which country? Number 2, which is the oldest football club in the world? Number 3, what year did national service end in the UK? Number 4, who was the last Chinese emperor? And number 5, association football was abbreviated or was shortened down to what in the 1990s? And that brings to an end the July 2024 quiz. So, if everyone is ready, we'll move on to the answers, going all the way back to category number 1, which was famous figures. So number 1 was Pablo Picasso, number 2 was Richard I, I'll also accept Richard the Lionheart, number 3 was Frederick Douglass, number 4 was Septimus Severus, number 5 was Catherine of Aragon, number 6 was Jane Austen, number 7 was Audrey Hepburn, number 8 was Chuck Berry, number 9 was Cleopatra, and number 10 was Salvador Dali. Category number 2, events and dates. Number 1, Byzantium became known as Constantinople, was D 330, so 1 was D. Number 2, Edward the Confessor becomes King of England, was A 1042, so 2 was A. Number 3, the deadliest tsunami in history was E 2004, so 3 was E. Number 4, William Shakespeare dies, was C 1616, so 4 was C. And finally, 5, Year of 4 Popes, was B 1276, so 5 was B. Moving on to category number 3, true or false. So true or false. Number 1, there had been 6 crewed landings on the moon. That is true, and 12 astronauts. Number 2, Liechtenstein sent 80 men to war in 1866, and they returned with 81. That is true. It's thought to be an Austrian officer or an Italian farmer. Number 3, Benjamin Franklin died of electrocution. That is false, he died of a stroke. Number 4, Bonnie and Clyde met when they both tried to rob the same liquor store. That is false. They met at a friend's house in Dallas. And number 5, the word blackmail comes from a charred letter delivered to George IV, threatening to reveal his secret and illegal marriage to Maria Fitzherbert. That is false. Now, the marriage did happen, but blackmail actually gets its name from the English mailing paid by English and Scottish border dwellers in return for immunity from raids and other forms of harassment, and the mail part of blackmail delivers from the Middle English mail, meaning rent or tribute. Category number 4, which came first? Number 1, the invention of the pen or the pencil. It was the pen, 3200 BC, compared to around 1565 AD, quite a disparity. Number 2, which came first, Ronnie Cray's death or Reggie Cray's death? It was Ronnie in 1995, compared to Reggie's in 2000. Number 3, the oldest classic horse race or the oldest golf course? It was the golf course. 1754 St Andrews versus the 1776 St Leger's horse race. Number 4, which came first, the Battle of Waterloo or the Watergate scandal? It was the Battle of Waterloo, 1815 to 1972 to 1974. And finally, number 5, which came first, the annexation of Austria by Germany or the annexation of Korea by Japan? It was the annexation of Korea by Japan. Korea annexation was 1910, Austria was 1938. Moving us on to our 5th and final category, general history knowledge. Number 1. The 335-year war, one of the longest yet with no deaths, was between the Isles of Scilly and which country? It was the Netherlands. Number 2. Which is the oldest football club in the world? It's Sheffield FC, Sheffield Football Club. Number 3. What year did national service end in the UK? It was 1960. Number 4. Who was the last Chinese emperor? It was Puyi. And number 5. Association football was shortened to what in the 1890s? It was soccer, originally written soccer, as in soccer. So I'd like to say thank you all for playing, hope you all enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what scores you got, and I hope to see you all again next month.